You could say that I'm exaggerating, or that literature is really not that serious, or that I should let people enjoy things, or that not everything is meant to be a classic. And you could be right, but seeing how prevalent media illiteracy is in our generation, I think we need to be more critical with ourselves and we need to do better. The other day, I was on TikTok and I saw a video of this nice gentleman explaining that we as a collective, we need to watch more movies, more specifically movies that are not mainstream or that are from other cultures, right? Instead of just watching Western media. And he mentioned it because the conversation started when two other content creators asked the audience, asked the viewers, what were the films that were life altering in their opinion. And many of these viewers just showed what the original creator considers mainstream or considers just not really that relevant. So he was mentioning how we as a collective, we need to read, or we need to watch more movies or watch more content that is not part of the collective or part of the comfort zone that we have created as a society. And I personally think this is the same for Biggs. I think we are very comfortable in our own little bubble of literary what's the name literary sectors, but we don't really seek our way out, maybe because we don't know what is out there for us to read or what we can enjoy, or maybe it's just because we are straight up lazy, and I include myself in this. And obviously, as a good researcher, I went on TikTok again and I started researching of for life altering bigs, right? And even though I got some nice recommendations that I actually put on my TBR, when I went to do my research of life altering bigs depending on the sector, I was terrified. I'm not gonna lie, because tell me why I saw like life altering big recommendations like Akota and Fourth Wing for fantasy literature, or why did I see Colleen Hoover mentioned in Romans like life altering big recommendations? Are we okay? I think we are not. And let me tell you why do I think these books, first of all, are not even life altering, but also the people that recommend these kind of books need to read more books, not only from the sector that they are talking about, but also in general, because I'm sorry, I understand that you can like these books. These are not life altering because they have nothing to bring to the table. And as always, before I get flamed and before one of my arteries pops, I want to say that, first of all, I am not an expert. I do not consider myself an expert, but obviously, taking into account I am a very avid literature enjoyer, right? Like you can see over here. But also, I have to say that I do not discriminate any books based on the sector or based on what is the interest, right? I read romance, I read science fiction, I read dark academia books, I read fantasy, I read literally everything. And I'm the kind of person that I always ask for recommendations, because maybe I am in my little own bubble, as I said before, and I don't see or I don't recognize books that I could potentially like, but also because I like to learn what are people's favorite books. I just think it's such a great question to ask, right? It says a lot about the person. So yeah, I do understand that you guys could like these books. I also like a lot of books that I think are mid, right? Like not everything is meant to be perfect, and not everything is meant to be like these life altering books, as we said before. But you're telling me that Akota is the peak of fantasy. You guys are fucking stupid at this point. Like, I myself have read Akota and I have enjoyed some parts of it. I'm gonna be real with you guys. But fantasy wise, when we talk about fantasy as a genre, as a literary genre, or like as an artistic genre itself, Akota is nowhere near as good as you guys think it is. And this is the one thing that really pisses me off. It grinds my gears, right? Because you guys literally just take any sort of books that have gotten viral on social media, so on TikTok or on Instagram, and then you literally shove it up, like up on everyone's throats, and you literally just become part of the circle of like all these social media book recommendations, right? They all are just a bunch of overhyped mediocre books that have no interest whatsoever, and like you read them, you just say meh, or maybe it hits the spot once, and then you discard them, you put them on your, like, I don't know, on your bookshelf, and then you completely forget about it, because that's what they are mediocre books. You can enjoy them, I'm not saying otherwise, I have enjoyed some mediocre books as well, but you cannot just come here and say that this is a life altering book, because it is not. For example, if we are talking about life altering books in fantasy, we obviously have to mention the Lord of the Rings, right? Because that is the one book that we can say, or the one trilogy that we can say is genuinely life altering, right? Because of the quality of the book, the quality of the story, and the quality of the culture within the book and outside the book, right? This book, the Lord of the Rings, or like the whole saga, has created or has altered the culture forever, right? Fantasy, as we know, wouldn't exist if there wasn't Lord of the Rings, or if Lord of the Rings didn't exist, right? And this is one thing that I always put a lot of emphasis to, that life altering books, like when I say this is a life altering book, it means that it has like permanently not only changed me, but also changed the culture, right? Let's say, for example, I don't think Akota has done this, because when I look at Akota, right, or when I look at the culture and like the whole history of the book, and the whole world of Akota, right? I don't see nowhere near as much effort as I could see in The Lord of the Rings, in The Name of the Wind, for example, right? If I look into the book critically, right, when I look at the history of the species, or the Fae, or the humans, for example, it is very clear that there is no secondary thought, or there is no world building, or at least not as much as we would think. Because first of all, why are you taking like huge, like Celtic influences, and just transform them and adapt them to your own story? And also, for example, why your map, like the Agota map, is literally the British Isles? Like, what the fuck? Like, you cannot tell me that this does not look like the UK, right? And also taking into account that, like, I think it's Hyben. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, but like Hyben, the one island over here. Do you know what Hyben is? Hyben comes from the word Hibernia, or like Hibernia, which is the Latin word for Ireland. Like, this this is Ireland. Like, you cannot tell me that this is just like the best world building that you have seen that is life altering, right? And also, not only that, but when I look at the world building itself, like the culture, the religion, the magic system, all of that is nothing more than subpar. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to burst your bubble. And this also burst my bubble as well, right? Because I got the recommendation, I saw how like hyped the book was, and I thought to myself, I need to read it, right? Because if the girls are saying that this is great, I have to read it. As someone that loves fantasy, I need to read that shit. And I was so disappointed. And it's because, again, we are overhyping these sort of books that are just, at the end of the day, mediocre. And same thing happens with romance, right? I was looking at life altering books when it comes to romance, and tell me why I saw people recommending Colleen Hoover. Like, I thought we hated Colleen Hoover as a collective, right? After what happened with It Ends With Us film, and like with all the drama that is still going on, like months afterwards. But tell me why we consider Colleen Hoover the new, or like the new generation Jane Austen. Like, we are not okay. You guys need to read more romance. You need to stop reading the same thing that you read in different fonts, or like the same story in different fonts just because it hits the spot. And you actually need to get out there and actually read some more romance, right? I'm not saying that you should read all the classics, because at the end of the day, there are some classics that are also quite fucking shit, to be fully honest, right? But you should stop, or like, I think you should be some like more self-critic, and you should go out there and start looking for more romance recommendations that are not the same thing that you always read. And also, many of you read the same thing because you know for a fact that there's going to be smut in those books. So maybe just as a recommendation, if you really are into the literary, and if you really are into the genre and the sector of romance, you should be able to read more books that are within romance but are not the same thing that you read over and over and over again. For example, if you want to read good romance, why don't you go for Madonna in a Fur Coat, White Nights, or anything related to Dostoevsky, because I think he was a true romantic, or you go for the Bronte sisters, or if you want anything that is more contemporary, Elena Armas, for example, Ali Hazelwood. They are all great examples of different types of romance that you can enjoy and that you can actually get into, right? But no, we love to go through to all the same types of stories and the same things, because at the end of the day, you don't really enjoy reading. What you enjoy is the safety of having the same stories all over again, which is something that happens in fantasy, that happens in science fiction as well, that happens in all in all literary genres, right? So at the end of the day, we ourselves are at fault of this media illiteracy, right? Because we are so comfortable and we feel so safe and into like our own little bubble of books or of literary genres, but we don't get uncomfortable, or like we don't get to the step of looking at other stories, right? And like we don't give opportunities to new authors because they have different stories, for example. That's why editors and publishing houses are so forced to create the same stories over and over again. And that's why there are many like authors, or like small authors, that don't get the opportunity to create their own stories or to publish their own stories originally, because people don't want those kind of stories, because they are too used to read the same stories over and over again. That's why when it comes to romance, I don't trust any sort of recommendations, because I know for a fact that it's going to be the same story and there's always going to be smut, as always. As a quick conclusion, after all that raging, the one thing that I have to say is that there's nothing wrong with having like a comfortable zone of books or genres that you enjoy. What I'm saying is that we as individuals and as a collective, we have to be more critic, and we also have to be a little harder on ourselves and try new things, right? Because at the end of the day, yes, you can like these things, but then you potentially miss on a new genre that you enjoy, or like a new author that that you will potentially be obsessed with, because you're not giving it the opportunity, because you're too comfortable in that area, right? Me, for example, I love the classics. You can see them here, right? But I actively try to read more contemporary books, because I also want to give it the opportunity. Like, I want to give the opportunity to contemporary authors so I can actively support them now whilst they are alive instead of dead, right? So I myself, I am guilty of this. I try to get myself out of my comfortable zone, or like of my comfort zone, right? And I think this is something that we should do. For example, if you love romance and you are obsessed with romance and the only things that you read are romance, maybe give an opportunity to romance classics, for example, or maybe romantasy, or maybe science fiction with romance. There are a lot of opportunities, or like there are a lot of books or authors that cross the lines between genres. Or if you love fantasy, for example, maybe go to romantasy, or maybe go to science fiction, that maybe you also would enjoy it as well. So the main conclusion over here is you can enjoy whatever you like, you can read whatever you like. What I recommend you is to get out of there, like get out of your comfort zone and try different things. If you don't like them, that's fair enough, but then you will know that you don't like those things. So after all that flaming and all that raging, I want to ask you guys a genuine question. And the question is, what is the big, or like what are the bigs that you read just to actively get out of your comfort zone and that you end up loving? Because for me, for example, when it comes to science fiction, it has to be the three body problem. They are just over here, these three bigs over here. Those are the bigs that I started reading just to get out of my comfort zone, and that are generally, you can see my review over here, I could talk about them for hours and I love them, right? I would also say the power as well. That was the big, it's just over here. It's the book that actually got me back into reading because I decided to give it an opportunity and it was way out of my comfort zone. So I want to ask you guys, what are the books that you decided to give an opportunity that you weren't actually really convinced about it, but that you end up loving? Those are the books that I want to know. I don't care what is the life altering book that you read. I want to know what are the books that are different that you gave them an opportunity and you end up loving. That's all for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my ranting and me being upset over things that really do not matter at the end of the day. But yeah, I would love to know your opinion. I would love to know what you think about this topic in general, or for example, what do you think about people just having small comfort zones or comfort literary zones and not getting out of their own little bubble? I would love to know your opinion as well, so please put it in the comments, or you can DM me on my social media. I would love to know what you guys think. And yeah, again, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next week. Bye, guys.